welcome to our Commerce Reimagined series. We are highlighting the change makers, visionaries, and the people who are changing the way we are defining and redefining commerce and technology. I'm excited to welcome Nadia Masri today. Nadia is a four-time founder, Forbes 30 Under 30 headliner, and a CEO and founder of Perksy. We're going to talk a little bit, Nadia, about what being a serial entrepreneur has been like and some of the other companies that you founded as well, because I know that people would love to hear a little bit more about your story. But we're also going to go a little bit into the role that Perksy plays today and how it's sort of being built differently than our historic research companies. I came from one myself in Kantar. And we were always looking for newer ways to engage consumers and to get to the right information for our businesses. So you're onto something, I think, pretty special. So we definitely want to hear a bit more about Perksy and it's the mission and a little bit more about behind the founder of this company. So I want to welcome you and have you tell us a little bit right at the kickoff about your company.
Awesome. Yeah, so thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here and I'm excited to be reconnecting with you again. So, I feel like you already gave me the intro, but serial entrepreneur, born and raised in Canada, and Perksy is the fourth company that I am working on. And I will say, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but it's my favorite for sure. To talk a bit about Perksy, I feel like it's really important to tell the story of really how I got there and what it was that I noticed was going on in the industry that really led to the creation of Perksy. So, as consumers, brands, and marketing had evolved with mobile, I realized that market research really hadn't. So, it's expensive, outdated, and time consuming, and more importantly, it's not mobile first or consumer friendly. So when I first took a look at the research space and took a look at how brands were collecting insights from their target audiences, I noticed that they were really struggling to reach younger consumers, especially. In general, a real and representative sample of everyday consumers, but especially younger consumers. And so the solution that I wanted to create was a consumer insights platform that would really attract the everyday audiences that brands are looking to reach and really solve research problems, on the business side. And that led to the creation of Perksy. So we are a next-gen consumer insights platform that powers real-time research with everyday consumers. And we do that through mobile. So users download the Perksy app and answer these immersive, interactive questions from brands in a format called stacks. So we never even use the word survey. It's like an ugly word for consumers. And for every stack that they answer, they can collect points, which they can then redeem at over 100 participating retailers like, Amazon, Nordstrom, Sephora, Uber Eats, Kate Spade, Delta Airlines, Whole Foods, etc. And on the brand side, they have a platform where they can create and design custom research campaigns. So we do lifecycle insights, everything from, market exploration and concept testing to, brand measurement over time, ad effectiveness studies, in-store feedback loops, et cetera. Brands can hyper-target their audience and then analyze all of that data in real time. So we are really providing a technology platform that productizes the research process for brands and does it in a way that's faster, of course, 24 to 48 hours compared to, weeks and months, is more efficient, it's tech enabled, and gives them access to better quality insights because they're reaching everyday consumers.
And I would imagine this isn't about a value play, but I can imagine it's also less expensive than some of the more traditional ways of getting to that insight and that research.
For sure. We always try to focus on, 2 points of the triangle, the value triad. It certainly is, but for us, the most important thing that we wanted to be able to bring to the table was, first and foremost, quality and then second, efficiency. So, speed is really important in this day and age. Especially like now with COVID, you have to move at the speed of culture. And I think what a lot of brands realized when the pandemic hit was the way in which they were collecting insights or conducting research with their target audiences was very, very slow. And at that point, you're right, there's the value piece, but the cost doesn't matter as much when it when it comes to sort of the time constraints. As everything was changing, these brands were coming to us and saying, oh my goodness, like we don't know how to measure this change. Like we need to know right now. We need to make moves right now. We can't wait 4 months. It's March, things are going crazy. We need to know by April. And, for us, we're like, all right, well, we can let you know right now. We can let you know this week. And so, I think today speed is just table stakes when it comes to consumer insights and research.
So I'm going to spend a little bit of time going slightly in a parallel path before we get back into Perksy, which I'd like to go into in a deeper way with you. But first, I can imagine that someone who's been the founder of this company, you have both an expertise at obviously understanding the role of a mobile device and what mobility means now for corporations and organizations, and also, of course, the Gen Z audience. And the stats are just incredible in terms of the amount of time that Gen Z is spending on their mobile phones, on their smartphones, the amount of ownership. I think it's something like 95% of all Gen Z has a smartphone in the US. So I would love to go a little bit deeper there to get your insight and understanding for our audience on what do you see changing? What are the implications of this for a more mass market, the way that Gen Z is probably playing a leadership role in the acceleration and newer platforms, newer apps, newer products that are coming out to match this need that this younger consumer has and demand that they have for the phone.
Absolutely. So, I'm glad you brought up mobile because mobile is my favorite. There's a reason why we decided to be mobile first. Actually, more than mobile first, we're mobile only. That is the way in which we collect insights from consumers. And the reason we decided to do that is because, mobile it's become ubiquitous. It's a part of everything we do. It's revolutionized everything from dating to food delivery to getting from point A to point B. And that's before the pandemic hit. Now, there are even more use cases for mobile. It's more common for, folks to order groceries through, apps like Instacart or Amazon Prime, which they can do through an app. And especially with younger audiences, the phone has just been an extension of their arms at this point. And that's true for myself too. I mean, my phone's right in front of me. I always have it within viewing distance. I know where my phone is pretty much at all times. And if I don't, it's because I need a new one. And I think the way brands need to be thinking about mobile, if they're not already, and I'm sure many are, is that that's where you need to be showing up first in order to reach these audiences. And that doesn't necessarily mean having your own app, but ensuring that the way in which consumers connect with your brand and the way in which you are building brand equity with them has some connection or a primary connection via mobile, whether that's presence on social such that you're reaching them through the apps where they're consuming content, whether that's Instagram, whether that's TikTok, whatever it might be. The assumption needs to be that many of these consumers, or the majority of these consumers, are going to interact with you first via mobile. Especially today in the world that we're living in and the way the world is shaped right now, especially in this moment, the way in which people are going to be reaching you is through mobile first. And I think that's really important for brands to understand. And I also think that, for many of these e-commerce brands and big brands in general, I mean, China's been leading the way with social shopping. And I think that, it's not that it's a missed opportunity. I just think that, the opportunity is significantly larger than maybe what brands think it is or are aware it is. Here in the United States with social shopping, I think they're relying on companies like Instagram to, I don't want to say do it for them, but I feel that when it comes to commerce specifically, the trend that I'm thinking about and what's on my mind most when I think about mobile, because for me, everything else is just default, is really the shopping aspect and ensuring that brands are creating experiences via these mobile channels that work for consumers. I mean, I recently purchased an item from a large company, a household name that I won't mention, but a household name. And, I never received the product. And I don't know and this was through Instagram, and I don't know who to talk to or how to follow up. I don't even know where my receipt went. I'm so confused, and I'm pretty tech savvy. And so I think that, you know, the way in which brands are creating these mobile first experiences, they don't just exist with like their own social accounts, but every way in which they show up in a mobile context. And of course, for us, that also means consumer insights, being able to connect with consumers in real time through their phones, because that's what's going around with them everywhere they go.
Let's talk about the live streaming one a bit, because I have this debate all the time too with people. I hear a lot, especially as we're a global organization, and we absolutely think social commerce is going to be a much bigger area of commerce going into 2020, back out of 2021 into 2022.
Absolutely.
Especially as people spend more time, and when I say people, I mean broader than just Gen Z, on applications like YouTube and Instagram and TikTok and others. So, but I do hear a lot, like, this is not China, this is the Western world, it's different here. And I can't really get at the articulation from clients sometimes around what do they really think is different, or to your point, is this just a barrier that are not prepared to make that leap yet of really being able to conceive how their brands begin to intersect with these levels of social platforms and engagements that ultimately do drive conversion and purchase. So talk to me a little bit about that, both from the research that you've been a part of and you've seen for brands, and also yourself as a consumer. Like, what do you say to a brand who's sort of not quite sure they want to place those bets yet?
Yeah, so I would say that I think that they're not necessarily understanding the opportunity or the magnitude of the opportunity, because what they're relying on are internal conversations that are not grounded in, you know, of course I'm making an assumption here, but for the most part aren't grounded in consumer research and feedback. I think that they're not asking consumers how they want to be shopping. Instead, they are placing their bets by having internal discussions of whether or not they think something is going to be significant, but they're not including that demographic in the conversation. And I believe this across the board. You can't have a conversation about an audience without a member of that audience or representation from that audience being in the room. And that is like a universal belief that can be applied to literally anything when it comes to the consumer landscape. But, you know, from what we've been seeing, I think it's also, I think we can think of it differently. So if we want to think of the underlying behavior, or like the underlying psychology of how these younger generations exist in the mobile sphere, the way I see it is really about infusion and real time. Like that's why we hear real time so much, but what does real time actually mean? Real time means in the moment and contextual. And so what consumers want is experiences that are in the moment and contextual. So when I am doing discovery, let's say, you know, whether I'm on Pinterest or I'm on Instagram, if I'm doing discovery in a category, let's say I'm home shopping, or I'm shopping for, you know, chic new activewear brands, whatever it might be. If I'm doing discovery, I'm consuming content in that category. The best time for me to buy is in the moment, is in that context. And what I want is my shopping experience to be infused into that context. And that is very true for younger audiences. That is their expectation. It's not even a desire, it is an expectation. And I think that, you know, brands haven't really made the leap to making that easier for consumers and shortening that path to purchase. But the best time, like, you know, any salesperson can tell you, even for a company, you know, even my sales team will tell you that you want to strike while the iron is hot. You know, you want to create the lowest barrier to entry, the easiest access to what it is you are trying to provide to your customer. And I believe that, you know, this is where younger audiences are spending their time. This is where, you know, this is where shopping needs to be integrated in a social context and like you said, like live streaming.
So let's talk influence here for a moment. So influence from Gen Z. And when I was running mall platforms, like, you know, across Westfield, and this was traditional retail, but retail that was trying to go more experiential, more digital. One of the theories that we always had, and this was grounded in data and research, was if you won the 13-year-old to 17-year-old in the household, and usually that was a female, but it could have been both, you won the whole household. If they wanted to be
Yep.
in your properties, if they wanted to be in your spaces and places, and you were attracting them in, and you were keeping that age-old tradition of that was their place of hangout, you usually won the entire family. So does that exist in the virtual online world? Or do you think that,
Yes.
as this generation moves online and is live streaming and shopping in this way, that is infectious to the entire family?
100%. It's amazing how, while so many things change, there are the things that stay the same, and that is still true today. And it's funny because that's something that's been consistent for some time now. But Gen Z has massive influence on older demographics. I was actually just having a conversation, like the call I had earlier today. I was talking to a company, and we were having a conversation about Gen Z's influence on older demographics, and they were saying the exact same thing with these emerging CPG products. These net new brands that are hitting the shelves at grocery stores, and how that shows up. And I also think it's because younger audiences, because sharing and live streaming and being on social is just second nature to them, and also discovery on through mobile and online is second nature to them. I think that they are able to bring things to the forefront. They're experts in discovery, they're experts in the digital world, and so they're able to call attention to things that they consider relevant, and as a result those things rise because they've flagged them as relevant, they've flagged them as interesting. But I do believe it is Gen Z that is setting the stage. They're trend setting. I think it's not just Gen Z. When millennials, were that age, they were doing it in their own ways, not to the extent and reach that Gen Z has. And I think that's why it's so much more compelling today. And the influence is that much more impactful because there are global stages where, this younger generation can have reach, through social platforms. And as a result, I think, when they do call attention to something, it becomes prominent in the digital space and everybody takes notice of it. They're setting the trends.
Yeah, so when you and I first were engaging together earlier this year, it was around another great panel conversation that was all about making 2020 kind of the year of hope, and some research that you had done in that regard too. And it brought up two interesting topics that we've all been discussing in different ways, and I'd love to get your thoughts on. The first is around like the role of activism, or another way you could say it is, purpose-driven brands. And we talk a lot about purpose to purchase, or values driving value for business. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that concept, and what you're seeing through your conversations with clients and in your research around, that role of activism today.
Yeah. So I am going to start with the research itself, because it's overwhelming. It is just overwhelmingly and unequivocally true that younger consumers buy from brands and engage with brands that represent their values. They make values-based decisions.
Organizations, companies play in taking responsibility, driving the conversation, making sure that people are feeling supported, I think, in ways that we probably didn't take that responsibility as companies before in people's lives. And I don't know if some of this is now this sort of collision of what is happening because we've been living and working from home, and we've gone through massive transformations in the way that we all kind of come together as companies. Some of that is, much more intimate and real and, fluid. And other parts of that, we're all just like, can't wait to get back to those in-person engagements. But talk to me a little bit about that mental health aspect from your point of view, and what you're even doing for your own communities and companies to support.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I'm glad you touched upon this because, it's close to home. My dad is a psychiatrist in Canada. And so, it's close to the family. So like mental health in my family has never had a stigma. And so I'm glad to see, the destigmatization of mental health in today's society and what we're seeing with younger audiences. I think they're having active conversations about mental health. I think for sure mental health is rising to the forefront because of what we've been all dealing with through the pandemic. I think because we can unanimously agree that our mental health has been affected. That's why everyone's so willing to address it and have conversations about it. I honestly think that, what we're seeing with younger audiences is it's being addressed as mental fitness rather than just mental health. I think historically it's been a conversation about mental health, and it's been a bit of an uncomfortable conversation because people, have had a hard time separating what they believe mental health to be and like how it's been described historically by generations prior versus what they're trying to address. And I think younger generations are really good at doing this, which is reframing or rephrasing a topic that we're all trying to address and talk about. And I think mental fitness is the way to describe it. And I think that's a positive spin, a positive twist. And so we're seeing younger audiences really address their mental well-being and their mental fitness. And I'm very, very glad to see that in general. It's something that I believe in too. I mean, in our communities, I mean, the best example I can give is in our company, we have mental fitness days, and those are effectively mental health days, but we frame it as mental fitness. We try to have a conversation in the company about, what a clear mind does for your overall well-being, your emotional health, your physical health, your spiritual health, your productivity, how you show up. And think of, there are athletes like LeBron James who have done little segments on apps like Calm, where, he's also helping normalize the conversation as an athlete by saying, my mental fitness is just as important as my physical fitness. I meditate, I sleep, I really treat my mental fitness in a really significant way. I take it seriously. And so I think this is something that younger generations are doing. And for them, there isn't as much of a stigma to talk about it. And so in our company, we address it in the exact same way. People can take those days. And I think more companies need to be doing this because of the natural progression of society today. If everyone's adopting mental fitness as a thing that we should all be thinking about and caring about, companies need to not be behind that curve. They should be ahead of the curve. Some are. And for those who aren't ahead, be with the curve and ensure that they're addressing that in their companies as well, especially if they want to attract younger talent to those companies, because consumers are paying attention.
Really good points. It's interesting because it goes back to the time when we think about health differently, just full physical health differently. We were, instead of being reactive and just responsive because you didn't feel well, you started recognizing all the things you needed to do to get protective and proactive about it. And this feels like now an even more holistic view of that when you start talking fitness and you start thinking about it as there are steps and things that you should be doing really on a regular, everyday basis. And it's not just you as an individual, but it's also the people you surround yourself with, the places you decide to work, who you decide to work with, all of these things that have cumulative effects and how we're able to function at our highest levels of potential. So I love that reframing, and thank you for giving us that push, not just you, but I know the newer generations. It's really critical to give us a language, to your point, around it and make these things more normalized and raise the conversations and push other people and organizations that may not be as comfortable or might be more conventional about it to really rethink, which is awesome to see happening. So I could keep talking to you. I have so many other things on my mind that I would love to go into, but I think for today, this was a great start, and it's been amazing to get to know you a little bit better, to hear a bit more about Persky. Obviously people can go find Persky online. I know that you have a connection to it on your LinkedIn. Please follow Nadia Masri on LinkedIn and her other social channels. You can find me, obviously, Beth and Kaminkow at LinkedIn. We both like to continue the conversation. Certainly, if you'd like to use Perksy, it would be great for you to get in touch with Nadia or go check out the company online. And thank you for the time today. It was a pleasure speaking with you and having you kind of open up our ideas around some of these things and to think more mobile first when it comes to our gathering of intelligence.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, Beth Ann.
You're welcome.